It's hard to prepare for a fight when your opponent changes forms. Here's a look at the brand new McFarlane Toys Diablo 4 Landslide Druid. The Druid is a savage shapeshifter, fluidly transforming between the forms of a towering bear or a vicious werewolf to fight alongside the creatures of the wild. He also commands the power of earth, wind, and storm, unleashing nature's wrath to devastating effects. I'm sure things are going to get quite unbearable in a moment with the Landslide Druid. And before that happens, let me send a big thank you to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide the sample of the Diablo 4 Landslide Druid that we can have a look at in this review. The figure, as of right now, is available along with the other Diablo 4 figures we've looked at so far. I think he goes for about $29, about $30 online. I'm sure in stores it'd be about the same. Landslide, though, Druid stands about 6.5 inches in height, or the figure's going to be about 18 centimeters tall. Just before, in fact, we jump over to the mystery bag that comes included with the Druid, one thing I did also want to show you guys is the stickers. These Diablo 4 figures so far have come included, I think, with all 3 stickers. The Sorcerer came with 3, the Druid came with 3. I don't know if we would make that the assumption then that all the Diablo 4 figures moving forward will all come included with 3 stickers. The stickers, though, are all different from one another. I really like this one, though, the one that actually has the wolves on either side. Now, I don't know if those are actually Druids turned into werewolves, or if those are just your garden variety, ones that would still rip you to shreds, werewolves that you would just find in the wild, just regular wolves that you'd find in the wild. Really like that sticker. There's also this one here as well, and there's one that is just basically a paw. That would make for a really interesting tattoo if I ever wanted to delve into the idea of getting tattoos. I haven't, just for in case anybody was wondering, I don't have any tattoos yet, but I may have that tattoo. I'd say leave it with me, but we're probably not going to be getting tattoos anytime soon. What we will, though, look at, though, is the included baggie. Now, this is the foil bag that's going to have, it feels like, 1 weapon. I'm sure there's probably 2 inside, but it only feels like I can only really feel one thing that looks almost like a staff. Of course, to know what exactly is inside, let's just rip the top of the bag carefully. Let's have a look inside to see what we got. So it looks like, okay, so we got ourselves, I guess that would be just a basic, like a long clubbing hammer, I guess, something similar to that. And see if there's anything else in there. No, that's it. So we only got 1 item this time around. The Sorcerer came included with 2. For some reason, the Druid only comes included with 1. It's neat. I mean, I really like the look of this. I just don't like the fact it's kind of bent, because obviously it's been sitting inside of a bag this whole time. It's got some interesting enough details. You can see it has a basically, it just looks like he's wrapped a rock on the end of a staff, and he basically just using that as a clubbing device. That would be a very effective clubbing device. And this, of course, can fit into his hand. He has basically a gestured hand, and then he has a gripping hand, so obviously your choices to choose from are pretty limited. You're only going to have a 50% chance. You got to make sure you choose wisely, at least. Now, so that's the mystery item. And then he's basically got all the stuff that's over here. I don't know why I'm waving my hand. Let's just make this guy a little bit more centered first. The figure comes included with a spiked mace or spiked club. Luckily, it's not spiked enough that it's going to hurt me, at least, but I'm sure it's going to inflict damage on anybody he's swinging this against. Once again, like, the handle is a little on the more warp side, but it's nothing I can't fix with a little bit of hot water or a hairdryer. It does fit into his hand, and by that, also what we just opened up out of the blind mystery bag can also fit inside his hand. The hand itself is made of pretty soft plastic, so you really don't even have to heat this at all. Just take the handle of the mace or club. I guess that would be a club, perhaps, and that fits into his hand. I guess you could also, as well, take the one that we just got out of the mystery bag, and that can also sit inside his hand as well. What he also comes included with, too, is like a bunch of sticks. Now, I'm sure this has something to do with the fact he can manipulate his body. He can basically be a shapeshifter, because it kind of looks like it's a bit of like a witch doctor style of thing that he's kind of holding in his hand. It looks to be like a log, a broken off piece of tree. As you can see, it's got all these like little amulets all wrapped around it. And there's also a ram skull that's also on the top there. I do wish, though, that they could have gone in and painted some of these details. As nice as they may look as a sculpt, it gets lost, unfortunately, by the fact it's still the same color as the rest of the branch or rest of this log. And this can easily just be flipped around by changing out the existing hand that he has on this side. Just going to pick up the hand. We're going to just twist it off and remove it from the form. Now he has a hole. We're going to fix that hole. We're going to pop that in place. And now he's got that as a place to store that instead. He also comes included with a staff, and again, it kind of is a bit bent, unfortunately. The top, though, kind of looks like a crest of like a rooster. Like it looks, obviously, it's a skeletal piece, but it kind of looks like the top of a rooster. And nicely painted here in beige, while again, all the rest of it is kind of really relegated to browns and reds. At least there's red here and there's brown, so there's a bit of a breakup. It's not all the same consistent color across from the top of the staff to, of course, the bottom. And of course, that fits into this hand, just because that's the only gripping hand that he has. Speaking of hands, now we already looked at the fact that he has included this hand. I just want to start the review with this just because, again, like it's got nothing in it. Pop that out. Of course, I replaced it with that one. But then, strangely enough, he also comes included with this hand that has a very obvious peg on the end of it. Now, you've already looked at all the accessories he came included with. I've now shown you all the accessories he comes included with. I don't know specifically what this hand belongs for. I mean, it clearly looks like it's supposed to plug into something. My only real guess is it has something to do with this. Now, this doesn't look like this removes at all, and I really didn't want to fight this at all just for the risk that it's not supposed to come off. But I thought, well, what if this came off and then it plugged onto this? But then you'd be literally looking at the same hand. So I really don't know what this is supposed to belong to, unless it's supposed to serve a purpose for a future figure that we're going to be looking at down the road. I don't know. We're going to put that right there. The last thing that the figure also comes included with, and I keep calling these figures, they're essentially just statues, is that he also comes with an alternate head sculpt. I'm going to spin this around right now so you guys can see. I would imagine this would be the way that the Druid would normally look before he starts to change form. A bearded fellow, as you can see, that does have the moose horn there on either side. These are fairly soft plastic too, but it's a fairly nicely painted piece. You can see they've painted the pupils very cleanly. They've got also as well the beard. There looked at a moment like there's a little bit of gray that was on his face, but that's not the case at all. It's a really nice sculpted face. I don't know if I would say I like it as much as this one. This is actually the head that is defaulted with the figure when you first take him out of his box. But this one has some interesting appeal to it. Certainly if you buy more than one of these, there's always the idea then in mind that you can swap the heads out and have different looking Druids on display. The only thing I would say is kind of missing, unfortunately, on the figure is the fact that he has all these little, I guess they're pieces of bone that are on the back of the figure's head. But again, kind of like what we looked at earlier with the staff, there's nothing really to break this up at all. It's literally just all the same brown as is for the sculpted head. I kind of wish that they could have found a way to paint some of these pieces as well. Picking up the figure as he is right now, the figure is on the same style of display stand as the earlier looked at Sorceress. It's also cast in the exact same plastic as well. It has, of course, the symbols there on the top that have been not only carved in, but painted nicely in black. And, of course, your figure is on top of that. The defaulted, I'm just going to remove this hand because I know it's going to get in the way of things. We're going to come back and retrieve the hand in a moment. But he also comes with this as the defaulted head sculpt, which is kind of really strange because I think if they were going to market this, obviously I feel is the cooler of the two heads, but I probably would have packaged the guy with the more boring looking head and then have this. I guess now that I think about it, people would probably walk right past this and just think of it as a more Viking figure. I guess the appeal of lure, bringing the people in, like collectors, to pick up a figure like this that you wouldn't normally pick up, is maybe by the idea of actually having the guy displayed with the defaulted head. So let me just correct what I was about to say. The boring, less interesting head definitely belonged, I think, more in the tray loose than putting it on this head. The defaulted head, again, strange to see that, is actually a skull face that's been painted very nicely with some additional brown. The back horns, as you can see, a Jetta on the back of the figure's head. Now, these are, again, softer plastic, but not to the point where they were warped at all. This one also does benefit from having longer hair on the back that you may notice on this one doesn't have it at all. Now, he doesn't have any articulation at all. These are basically all just staction pieces. If you wanted to, you can just pop the head off from the provided peg, take the more boring head sculpt. I don't really want to keep calling it a boring head sculpt. And you're going to line everything up and fit that back in place. You don't want to when you're putting it back down. I kept wanting to put it forward like this, but it has to turn on the side because there's a very unique way that this has to fit on top of the peg. So it has to turn sideways. And of course, we'll go ahead and let's take one of the just regular hands, I suppose. Plug that back in place. There we go. And then you have this look for you'll have this look, I should say, for the Landslide Druid a little bit better. Now, again, I don't find this as interesting really as this head sculpt, but I do like the idea that they gave us two different heads to work with. For the rest of his armor and the rest of his body, he has further on the tops of his shoulders. There's a nice little bit of breakup where they've actually painted this to be a lighter coloring of gray and then added the silver on the top for where his armor would be. There is a rather interesting little symbol that he has on the front of his chest. Probably has something, I'm sure, to do with the Druid team or the Druid race that he's part of. And you got all this additional kind of I don't know, it looks almost like hand-forged metal that he's got on the front for his armor pieces. He has it also down below here as well with a few little kind of calling, what would you call those, calling horns or war horns that he has on either side. They might very well as well also hold powders too, so it may not always be just like a war horn. They may actually hold something inside that he actually does use. He's a druid after all. And he's also got these really interesting looking bottom pieces too. I'm guessing these would be like leather pelts that he's wearing, where it has all these interesting little teeth that he has on the bottoms of these. These at least have been painted. If they had not been painted, they wouldn't have certainly not stood out as well as they do right now. And he's got big clunky boots. Look at the size of these boots that he has. A very large looking fellow. Very nicely painted. Paint again is really clean on all of these figures. I've been, surprisingly quite impressed. I mean, obviously they are lacking a lot in the way of the posability. There's nothing really on this guy at all that really moves. But where I feel that they still make up for it is something I still said when we looked at the Hydra Lightning Sorceress. I think they really make for interesting looking statues. Again, putting this guy on display and then bringing back in the Hydra Sorceress that we've already had a look at. I like the look of these. Not everyone's. I certainly get that. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But I do really like the look of these. They don't have posability, no. But they do have really interesting sculpts, yes. And they also have swappable parts, too. I still don't know why, for the Druid at least, he comes included with this hand, when it doesn't seem to be a case that the hand serves any purpose whatsoever. I mean, it clearly looks like it should attach to something. I even thought, well, what if it's supposed to attach, say, for example, to a head? So if you wanted to, say, for example, hold a helmet, for example, he could kind of hold this in his hand this way. But if you look at it, it's a completely different peg. It almost looks as if it should really fit all the way in. Maybe it's just a case I'm not pushing in as far as it could go. I guess you could really have it displayed like that. I don't really know if that's supposed to be the intended reason why they included the hand as they did, but I guess that's one option to display it if you want to have this still be part of the statue and go with the more this or the human face if you want to have this being the defaulted look when you have this guy on your shelf. Wrapping up now the review of the Diablo 4 Landslide Druid. I've got the figure, as you can see here in final looks, displayed with the alternate head sculpt in his hands. I tried, thinking that may have been the reasoning why there was the peg on the end of his hand. I tried to actually attach it the way that it was, and there was no way it was going to accommodate it. Just because the horned helmet was too close to his shoulders, it just wasn't able to fit that way. So what I've got instead is I've got like the fingers, the ends of his fingers basically just wedged inside the whole cavity. I know that's not the way it's supposed to be, but I can't think of any other reasoning why that hand was even included in the first place. It looks like very well it belongs to something, and yet it belonged to nothing when I got the figure out of the packaging. If anybody happens to have any ideas, certainly let me know down below in the comments section. Though on the other hand of the Landslide Druid, I've got the figure displayed with the item that was inside the mystery bag. One item this time around, unlike the sorceress we looked at before that had the two. It may not always be the case. I'm sure that these Diablo 4 figures were going to have two accessories in a bag. Maybe the slightly bigger and bulkier figures are only going to have one. The slightly more thinner, smaller figures like the sorceress are going to then have two. The figure doesn't have, once again, any posability, but again, nicely painted. More in earth colors. You got the browns, and again, you've got a little bit of the white coloring with the fur. The fur does look nice, as well as the silver that they've used for the armor. Still, though, when it comes to displaying this guy, not going to go with the head sculpt that he has right now. Rather, I'm going to go with the head that he has currently in his hand. What is that peg all about? Big thank you once again to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide the sample of the brand new Diablo 4 Landslide Druid. This guy is currently available as of right now, either online or in stores. I don't have the benefit of finding these kind of guys in stores. I've checked Toys R Us. They didn't have anything. Yes, we have Toys R Us still in Canada. So my only option, if I want to get any more of these, is to try to track one down on eBay, or probably even like Amazon, or even sometimes online sites. There's many online sites that currently have this guy showing at around $29.99, so about $30. Not bad at all. But what do you guys think of the figures? Let me know down below in the comments section. Have you guys at all been collecting the Diablo 4 figures? And if you have, which ones do you have in your collection right now? Also as well, hey, if you guys enjoyed this video, why not hit it with a like? If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and you certainly would like to stick around for more, if you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you turn on that bell notification. And if you haven't already done so, because it hasn't happened yet, make sure you're coming back on a regular basis, because there's always going to be new videos popping up here on this channel. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.